Marcus Chen had seen many strange things during his 5 years as Earth's diplomatic liaison to the Zephyrian Empire, but nothing quite prepared him for standing in the crystalline throne room of Queen Lyralii, watching her massive form shift nervously on her bioluminescent seat. The Queen of the Galaxy's most powerful empire was afraid, and that terrified him more than any weapon ever could.
Ambassador Chen, the Queen's voice resonated through the chamber like distant thunder, her translator implant converting her melodic tones into crisp English. I must speak with you about a matter of utmost delicacy.
Marcus straightened his diplomatic uniform and nodded respectfully. The Zephyrians were humanoid but stood nearly 9 feet tall, with iridescent skin that changed colors with their emotions. Right now, Queen Lyralii's skin flickered between deep purple and silver colors he'd learned indicated serious concern. Your Majesty, Earth stands ready to assist the Empire in any way possible, Marcus replied, though privately he wondered what help humanity could possibly offer to a civilization that had mastered faster-than-light travel when humans were still discovering fire. The Queen rose from her throne, her elegant robes flowing like liquid starlight. Walk with me, Ambassador.
What I must discuss cannot be overheard by the court.
They moved through corridors lined with living walls that pulsed gently with bioluminescent patterns. Marcus had spent months learning to read these patterns. They were a secondary form of Zephyrian communication, expressing emotions and thoughts too complex for words.
Right now, the walls were practically screaming anxiety.
Tell me, Marcus, the Queen said, using his first name for the first time in their acquaintance, what do you know of human bonding rituals?
Marcus blinked in surprise.
I'm sorry, Your Majesty, but I'm not sure I understand the question.
Your species forms incredibly strong emotional connections, do they not?
Friendships that last lifetimes, romantic partnerships that endure until death, familial bonds that survive any hardship.
The Queen's skin shifted to a warm golden hue. This is not common among the galaxy's species. Most of us form temporary alliances, convenient associations.
But humans love with a ferocity that borders on madness.
I suppose that's true, Your Majesty. We do tend to form deep emotional bonds.
They entered the Queen's private garden, a vast space filled with plants from 1,000 worlds. Crystalline trees chimed softly in the artificial breeze while flowers that looked like living gemstones released sweet fragrances that made Marcus feel slightly lightheaded. My daughter, Princess Zyra, has been troubled, the Queen continued, settling onto a bench that molded itself to her form. She is my heir, destined to rule the Empire when I pass into the eternal light.
But she has become withdrawn, melancholy.
Our royal physicians cannot find anything physically wrong with her, and our mind healers say her thoughts are dark. Marcus sat carefully on the bench beside her, noting how it adjusted to accommodate his much smaller human frame.
I'm sorry to hear that, Your Majesty. Depression is something humans understand well. Perhaps our medical knowledge could help? The Queen's skin flickered to deep blue. It is not a medical condition, Ambassador. It is loneliness. You see, Zyra has never formed what you humans call friendship.
In our culture, the royal family remains isolated to prevent emotional manipulation or weakness. But I fear this isolation has wounded her spirit in ways that may never heal.
Understanding began to dawn on Marcus. And you think a human companion might help?
Not just any human, the Queen said, turning to face him directly. Her eyes were like pools of liquid silver, and Marcus could see his own reflection in them. You, specifically. I have observed your interactions with our court over these past years. You form connections effortlessly, yet you remain honorable and truthful. You have never sought to manipulate these bonds for personal gain.
Marcus felt his mouth go dry.
Your Majesty, I'm flattered, but I'm a grown man, and your daughter is
312 years old and you're counting, well into adulthood for our species, the Queen interrupted.
But young enough to learn new ways of thinking, new ways of being. I do not ask you to court her, Ambassador.
I ask you to teach her what you humans call friendship.
The Queen stood and began walking deeper into the garden, Marcus hurrying to keep up with her longer strides. They passed a fountain that sang with voices of water, and birds that looked like tiny dragons perched in trees made of what appeared to be solid light.
With respect, Your Majesty, wouldn't it be better to find someone closer to her own age? Another young noble, perhaps?
You do not understand, the queen said, her skin now cycling through rapid color changes that Marcus recognized as intense emotion.
Zyra has rejected every companion we have offered. She finds our courtiers false, our nobles manipulative.
She trusts no one, speaks to no one willingly.
Last week, she told me she sees no point in living at all. Marcus stopped walking.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh. The queen turned to face him again. I am not just a mother, ambassador.
I am the ruler of an empire spanning 3 galaxies.
I have commanded fleets that could shatter star systems and negotiated treaties that have prevented wars that would have killed billions.
But I cannot help my own child, and it is destroying me from within.
For the first time since meeting her, Marcus saw Queen Lyralii not as an empress, but as a mother desperate to save her child.
The realization hit him like a physical blow. What exactly would you want me to do? He asked quietly.
Spend time with her.
Show her what humans call friendship looks like.
Teach her to laugh again, to find joy in simple things. Help her understand that connection does not mean weakness. The queen's skin shifted to a pleading shade of pale green.
I have watched you, Marcus Chen. You have a gift for bringing out the best in others.
You made even Admiral Koroth smile, and he hadn't done so in 50 years.
Marcus remembered the gruff Zephyrian military leader who had initially opposed any alliance with humanity.
It had taken months of patient conversation and shared meals to win him over, but eventually Koroth had become one of Earth's strongest advocates in the imperial court.
And, if I agree to this, what would be my official position?
Cultural liaison to the princess, the queen said immediately. You would retain your ambassadorial rank and continue your regular duties, but you would also spend time each day with Zyra.
Teaching her about human customs, perhaps learning about ours in return.
They had reached the center of the garden, where a small grove of trees surrounded a pool of water so clear it seemed like liquid air. Fish that glowed with their own internal light swam in lazy circles, and Marcus could see all the way to the bottom where coins and small offerings lay scattered. This is our wishing pool, the queen explained.
Citizens come here to make requests of the royal family.
They throw tokens into the water and hope their desires reach our hearts. She reached into her robes and withdrew a small, glowing coin. I have carried this for 3 months, ambassador. Every day I come here and hold it, wishing for something that could save my daughter. She tossed the coin into the pool, and it sank slowly, its light growing brighter as it descended. What did you wish for?
Marcus asked.
That someone would care enough about a lonely princess to try to help her heal, the queen replied. That someone would see past her crown and royal blood to the hurt child beneath. Marcus stared into the pool, watching the queen's coin settle among hundreds of others.
Your Majesty, I need to be honest with you. I don't know anything about being a friend to royalty.
I'm just a guy from Chicago who got good at talking to aliens. That is exactly why you are perfect for this task, the queen said with conviction. You see people as people, regardless of their status or species. You have no agenda beyond kindness.
But what if I make things worse? What if she doesn't like me, or I say something wrong?
The queen was quiet for a long moment, her skin cycling through thoughtful shades of blue and silver.
Then, at least I will know I tried everything possible.
But I do not believe you will fail, Marcus Chen. Humans may be young and small and fragile compared to the other species in this galaxy, but you possess something most of us have forgotten.
What's that?
Hope. Stubborn, unreasonable, beautiful hope. You believe that broken things can be fixed, that hurt people can heal, that tomorrow can be better than today. The queen's skin brightened to warm gold.
That is why your species has thrived despite every disadvantage.
That is why we welcomed you into the galactic community despite having nothing to offer but yourselves. Marcus felt a flush of pride at her words, but also the weight of responsibility.
When would you want me to start? Tomorrow, if you are willing. I will have you moved to quarters in the family wing of the palace.
You will take your meals with Zyra, accompany her to her lessons and duties, and spend your free time helping her understand what companionship means.
And, you really think this could work?
The queen smiled, an expression that transformed her alien features into something beautiful and warm.
I think that you are a human, Ambassador Chun.
And humans have a reputation throughout this galaxy for achieving impossible things simply because they refuse to accept that something cannot be done. They walked back toward the palace in comfortable silence, passing other courtiers and servants who bowed respectfully to their queen. Marcus noticed how they all avoided eye contact with her, maintaining proper distance and formality. No one spoke to her unless spoken to, no one shared casual conversation or friendly gestures. It was magnificent and terrible all at once, the isolation of absolute power.
"Your Majesty," Marcus said as they reached the throne room, "may I ask you something personal?"
Of course.
"Do you have friends? Real friends, I mean, not just advisors or allies?"
The queen's skin flickered to sad purple. "I have not had what you would call a friend in over 200 years, Ambassador. The throne is a lonely place, but it is the burden we accept for the good of our people."
She paused.
"Perhaps that is another reason why I want this for Zyra. I want her to know what I have forgotten, what it feels like to be cared for simply for who you are, not what you represent."
"I'll do it," Marcus said suddenly.
"I'll help her however I can." The queen's skin blazed with brilliant gold, and, for a moment Marcus had to shield his eyes from the intensity of her joy.
"Thank you," she whispered. "You cannot know what this means to me."
As they entered the throne room, Marcus caught sight of a figure standing in the shadows near one of the massive pillars that supported the crystalline ceiling. She was tall and slender like her mother, but, where the queen's presence filled the room with authority, this figure seemed to be trying to disappear entirely. Her skin was pale silver, almost colorless, and she moved with the careful steps of someone who didn't want to be noticed. "Zyra," the queen called gently.
"Come here, daughter."
The princess emerged from the shadows reluctantly, and Marcus got his first clear look at her. She was beautiful in the way all Zephyrians were beautiful, with delicate features and large eyes that reflected light like mirrors. But there was something broken in her expression, an emptiness that made Marcus's chest ache.
"This is Ambassador Chen," the queen continued.
"He will be joining our household as your cultural liaison."
Princess Zyra looked at Marcus for perhaps 3 seconds before dropping her gaze to the floor.
"As you wish, mother," she said in a voice barely above a whisper.
"Zyra has been studying human culture," the queen said, though the encouragement in her voice sounded forced.
"Perhaps you could share some of your experiences with her, Ambassador." "I'd be honored to, Your Highness," Marcus said, offering a slight bow. The princess glanced at him again, and, this time Marcus caught something in her expression, surprise, maybe, that he had spoken to her directly instead of through her mother. But, the moment passed quickly, and her gaze returned to the floor. "I will leave you two to become acquainted," the queen said. "Ambassador, your new quarters will be ready within the hour." She approached her daughter and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder.
"Be kind, my star. He is here to help."
After the queen departed, Marcus and Princess Zyra stood in awkward silence in the vast throne room. The princess seemed to be waiting for him to leave, while Marcus tried to figure out how to start a conversation with someone who clearly didn't want to talk.
"So," he said finally, "what kind of human culture have you been studying?"
"Literature, mostly," Zyra replied without looking up. "Your species produces an unusual amount of fictional narratives." "We do like our stories," Marcus agreed.
"Any particular favorites?"
For the first time, he saw a flicker of something other than emptiness in her expression.
"I have been reading about human concepts of friendship."
"The loyalty between your fictional characters seems intense." "Well, fiction tends to exaggerate things, but, yeah, humans do tend to form pretty strong friendships."
"What did you read?"
"A series about something called hobbits and their adventures with wizards and elves," Zyra said, and Marcus had to suppress a smile.
"Lord of the Rings?"
"That's a good choice."
"What did you think of it?"
"I do not understand how Frodo and Sam maintained their bond despite such hardship," she said, finally, looking directly at him.
"In Zephyrian culture, such challenges would destroy any partnership. Self-preservation would take precedence."
Marcus studied her face, seeing genuine curiosity there for the first time.
"That's actually a really good question. Want to sit down and talk about it?"
"I've got some thoughts on why human friendships work the way they do."
Princess Zyra hesitated, glancing toward the shadows as if planning to retreat there.
But, after a moment, she nodded and gestured toward a pair of chairs near one of the windows that looked out over the capital city. As they settled into the surprisingly comfortable crystal furniture, Marcus realized that Queen Lyralii had been right about one thing: humans did have a talent for connecting with others. He could already see the princess relaxing slightly, her rigid posture softening just a fraction. The thing about human friendship, Marcus began, is that it's not really about logic or self-preservation. It's about choosing to care about someone else's well-being as much as your own, even when it's not convenient or safe.
But why? Princess Zyra asked, leaning forward slightly. What benefit does this provide? Marcus smiled. That's the beautiful thing about it, there doesn't have to be a benefit. Sometimes we're friends with people just because we enjoy their company, or because they make us laugh, or because they understand something about us that no one else does. For the first time since meeting her, Princess Zyra's skin showed a hint of color, a faint gold shimmer around her temples.
Interest, Marcus realized. She was actually interested in what he was saying. I think, Marcus continued, that your mother brought me here because she wants you to experience that kind of connection. Not as a princess talking to a subject, but as one person getting to know another person.
And you agreed to this?
Zyra asked, her voice carrying a note of skepticism.
I did, Marcus said simply.
Because I think everyone deserves to have at least one person in their life who cares about them just for who they are. Princess Zyra was quiet for a long moment, staring out the window at the sprawling city below. Finally, she spoke again, her voice so soft Marcus had to strain to hear her. I have never had such a person, she admitted.
I am not certain I would know how to be such a person for someone else.
Well, Marcus said, settling back in his chair with a smile, I guess that's something we can figure out together. 3 weeks had passed since Marcus moved into the family wing of the palace, and he was beginning to understand why Princess Zyra had become so withdrawn. Every aspect of her life was controlled, monitored, and judged. She couldn't take a walk without guards, couldn't eat a meal without servants analyzing her choices for political implications, and couldn't express an opinion without advisors explaining why it might be problematic for future diplomatic relations. Marcus watched from his position at the breakfast table as Zyra pushed food around her plate without eating, her skin maintaining the same colorless silver it had shown for days. Across from her sat Lord Vex, her primary tutor, who was droning on about trade agreements with the Andromedan Confederacy. The princess must understand that every public statement she makes will be scrutinized for signs of imperial policy, Vex was saying, his own skin a pompous shade of deep blue. A careless word could destabilize entire sectors. What if she just wanted to say she liked the color of a sunset? Marcus interjected, causing both Zephyrians to look at him in surprise.
Would that destabilize sectors too? Lord Vex's skin shifted to an irritated orange. Ambassador Chin, you cannot possibly understand the complexities of ruling an empire.
Every word from the royal family carries weight. Maybe that's the problem, Marcus said mildly, taking a bite of something that tasted like cinnamon-flavored starlight.
Maybe people shouldn't have to carry that much weight all the time.
Princess Zyra glanced at him, and Marcus caught the faintest flicker of curiosity in her expression before she looked away again.
After breakfast, they walked to Zyra's morning language lesson. She was learning Andromedan, a complex language that involved both verbal communication and electromagnetic field modulation.
Marcus sat in the corner, officially observing for cultural exchange purposes, but really just trying to understand how anyone could function under such constant pressure. Princess, your electromagnetic resonance is too aggressive, the language instructor, a thin Zephyrian named Kira, announced. You must modulate more gently, or you will offend Andromedan sensibilities. I am trying, Zyra said quietly, her skin flickering with brief flashes of frustration. Try softer, Kira insisted. A princess cannot afford to make such mistakes. Marcus watched as Zyra's skin went completely colorless again, all emotion draining from her features. She was shutting down, he realized, the same way she did whenever the pressure became too much.
Can I ask a question? Marcus said, standing up. I'm curious about something. Both instructor and student looked at him expectantly. What happens if she makes a mistake? Like, actually makes an error in front of Andromedan diplomats? What's the worst-case scenario? Kara looked scandalized. The diplomatic implications could be enormous. The Andromedans might interpret it as disrespect, or ignorance, or they might think, oh, she's still learning, how refreshing to meet someone who's not pretending to be perfect, Marcus interrupted. Have you ever actually seen an Andromedan get offended by a language mistake? Well, no, Kira admitted reluctantly. But, the potential for offense is being used to terrorize a young woman who's trying her best to learn, Marcus said firmly. What if we tried a different approach? What if we assumed that most people, regardless of species, are understanding when someone makes an honest mistake while learning? Princess Zyra was staring at him now, her skin showing the faintest hint of that golden shimmer again. Ambassador Chen, Kara said stiffly, you are not qualified to instruct royal protocol. No, but I am qualified to recognize when someone is being set up for failure, Marcus replied. Princess Zyra, try the phrase again. And, this time, don't worry about being perfect. Just focus on communicating what you want to say. Zyra looked between her instructor and Marcus, clearly torn between following protocol and trying something new. Finally, she took a deep breath and attempted the Andromedan greeting again. It wasn't perfect, but it was genuine, and Marcus could hear the difference immediately. Better, he said with a smile. You sounded like a person instead of a recording. For the first time since he'd met her, Princess Zyra smiled back. It was small and tentative, but it was real. After the language lesson, they had an hour of free time before Zyra's afternoon schedule began. Marcus had been hoping for weeks to get some unstructured time with her, and he was determined to make the most of it. Want to see something cool? He asked as they walked through the palace corridors. I suppose, Zyra replied, though she sounded uncertain. Marcus led her to one of the palace balconies that overlooked the city. The Zephyrian capital was a marvel of organic architecture, with buildings that grew rather than being constructed, and transportation systems that flowed like rivers of light through the air. Look down there, Marcus said, pointing to a small park visible from their vantage point. See those Zephyrians sitting on the benches? What do you think they're doing? Zyra followed his gaze. I do not know. Waiting for transportation, perhaps? Look closer. See how they're positioned? The way they're gesturing? Princess Zyra studied the scene more carefully. Marcus could see her analyzing the body language, the skin color patterns, the casual proximity of the individuals. They appear to be conversing, she said slowly. For no particular purpose. Exactly. Marcus grinned. They're just hanging out. Talking about nothing important, enjoying each other's company. No agenda, no protocol, no diplomatic implications. Just friendship. But why? Zyra asked, genuine puzzlement in her voice. What do they gain from such interactions? Marcus leaned against the balcony railing, considering how to explain something that seemed so natural to him. They gain the feeling that they're not alone in the universe. They gain someone to share their thoughts with, someone who might make them laugh or help them see things differently. They gain the knowledge that someone else cares whether they're happy or sad or excited about something. That seems... Zyra paused, searching for words. Inefficient. Marcus laughed, causing Zyra to look at him in surprise. Yeah, it is totally inefficient. Most of the best things about being human are inefficient. Love is inefficient. Art is inefficient. Friendship is definitely inefficient. But they make life worth living. I do not understand, Zyra said quietly. Life is worth living because we have duties, responsibilities. We serve purposes greater than ourselves. Do you actually believe that? Marcus asked gently. Or is that just what you've been told to believe? Princess Zyra was quiet for a long moment, her skin cycling through subtle shades of confusion and something that might have been longing. I do not know, she finally admitted. I have never been given the opportunity to discover what I believe. Well, Marcus said, maybe we can work on that. Over the following days, Marcus began finding small ways to introduce concepts of choice and personal preference into Zyra's rigidly structured life. During meals, he would ask her what she actually wanted to eat instead of what was traditionally served.
During walks through the palace, he would suggest taking different routes just to see something new. The responses were always the same at first: confusion, uncertainty, sometimes mild panic at the idea of making decisions based on personal desire rather than duty. But, gradually, Marcus began to see tiny sparks of curiosity in her behavior. One afternoon, as they sat in the Queen's garden during a break between lessons, Marcus noticed Zyra staring at a particular flower with unusual intensity.
"What are you thinking about?" he asked.
"That flower," Zyra said, pointing to a delicate bloom that shifted between blue and purple in the artificial sunlight. "It serves no purpose.
It is not food, not medicine, not building material. It exists simply to be beautiful. And that bothers you?"
"No," Zyra said, surprising him.
"It fascinates me.
I have been wondering what it would be like to exist simply to be myself, with no other purpose required."
Marcus felt a surge of hope.
This was progress, real, genuine progress. "What do you think you would be like if you could just be yourself?" he asked.
Princess Zyra considered this for a long time. "I think," she said slowly, "I think I would like to learn about things that interest me, not just things that are politically useful. I think I would like to have conversations about ideas, not just policies. I think I would like to know what it feels like to make someone laugh."
"Those are all things we could work on," Marcus said.
"If you wanted to."
"But, I am a princess," Zyra said, her skin flickering with anxiety.
"I have obligations."
"Being a princess is what you do," Marcus replied.
"It doesn't have to be all that you are." That evening, Marcus was surprised when Zyra appeared at his quarters just as he was settling down with a book he'd brought from Earth.
"Ambassador Chen," she said formally, though he could see nervous energy in her posture. "Marcus," he corrected gently.
"Friends use first names."
"Are we the friends?" she asked, the question carrying such vulnerability that Marcus felt his heart clench.
"I'd like to be," he said honestly. "Would you like to come in?" "I was just reading."
Zyra entered his quarters hesitantly, looking around at the few personal items he'd brought from Earth: photos of his family, some books, a small plant that somehow thrived in the palace's artificial environment.
"What are those images?" she asked, pointing to the photographs.
"Pictures of my family," Marcus explained. "My parents, my sister and her kids, some friends from college. They all appear to be touching each other," Zyra observed, studying the casual embraces and relaxed poses in the photos.
"Physical affection is pretty normal for humans," Marcus said.
"These people all care about each other, so they're comfortable being close. Zephyrian royalty do not touch casually," Zyra said, though she didn't sound like she was stating a rule so much as expressing regret.
"What do you do when you're sad or scared?" Marcus asked. "Who comforts you?"
"No one," Zyra replied simply. "I am expected to maintain composure at all times." Marcus felt anger flare in his chest, not at Zyra, but at a system that could isolate someone so completely. "That sounds incredibly lonely."
"It is," Zyra said, so quietly he almost missed it.
They sat in comfortable silence for a while, Marcus reading and Zyra examining his belongings with careful curiosity. Eventually, she spoke again.
"Marcus, may I ask you something personal?"
"Of course."
"When you were young, did you ever feel as though you were broken? Different from others in ways that could not be fixed?"
Marcus set down his book and looked at her carefully.
"Yeah, actually. I was pretty awkward as a kid. Had trouble making friends, felt like I didn't fit in anywhere." "Why do you ask?"
"I have always felt defective," Zyra said, her skin showing faint patterns of deep sadness. "Others Zephyrians my age seem comfortable with isolation, with formal relationships and political considerations. But I find myself wishing for something I cannot even name." "Connection," Marcus said softly.
"You're wishing for connection. And that doesn't make you defective, Zyra. It makes you human, metaphorically speaking." "How did you learn to form friendships?" she asked. "How did you overcome your awkwardness?" Marcus smiled, remembering his younger self. "Honestly?
I stopped trying so hard to be what I thought people wanted, and started just being myself. It turned out that when I was genuine, I attracted people who actually liked me for who I was."
But what if who I am is not suitable for a princess?
Then, maybe the definition of suitable for a princess needs to change, Marcus said.
Your mother asked me to help you, Zyra. Do you trust her judgment? More than anyone's, Zyra replied immediately.
Then, trust that she brought me here because she loves you and wants you to be happy, not just dutiful.
Maybe it's time to find out who Princess Zyra really is when she's allowed to just be a person. The next morning brought an unexpected opportunity.
Queen Lyrelii had been called away on urgent imperial business, leaving Zyra's schedule unusually flexible. Her tutors and advisors, uncertain how to proceed without the queen's explicit instructions, defaulted to giving the princess a rare free day.
What would you like to do?
Marcus asked as they finished breakfast.
I do not know, Zyra admitted. I have never had a completely free day. Well, let's figure it out together. Is there anything you've always wondered about? Anywhere in the palace or city you've wanted to explore? Zyra thought for a moment, her skin showing faint flickers of excitement.
There is a place, the servants speak of it sometimes. The market district. They say it is loud and chaotic and full of different species all trading together.
Want to go see it? Could we?
Zyra asked, then immediately shook her head.
No, that would be impossible. The security concerns, the protocols. What if we went in disguise? Marcus suggested. Simple clothes, no royal identification. Just two people exploring the city.
That would be highly irregular, Zyra said, but Marcus could see the temptation in her expression. Sometimes highly irregular is exactly what you need, he replied with a grin. An hour later, they were walking through the palace's service entrance, both dressed in simple clothing that Marcus had procured from the staff. Zyra had used some kind of bioluminescent makeup to dull her skin's natural shimmer, making her appear like any other young Zephyrian.
The market district was everything Zyra had imagined and more.
Vendors from dozens of species hawked their wares in a cacophony of languages and electromagnetic frequencies. Smells and sounds and colors assaulted their senses from every direction, and Marcus watched with delight as Zyra's eyes went wide with wonder.
It is so.
She searched for words.
Alive? Marcus suggested. Yes. Everyone appears to be enjoying themselves.
They wandered through the stalls, observing everything from exotic foods to impossible technologies to artworks that defied description. Marcus bought them each something called crystal fruit from a vendor who insisted it would give them prophetic dreams, and they sat on a bench to eat while watching the crowd flow around them.
No one knows who I am, Zyra said suddenly, wonder in her voice. How does that feel?
Terrifying, she admitted.
And wonderful. I could be anyone. I could say anything.
I could make mistakes and no one would care. You could just be yourself, Marcus said. As if to test this theory, Zyra stood up and approached a nearby vendor selling what appeared to be musical instruments. Marcus watched as she asked questions, laughed at the vendor's jokes, and even attempted to play one of the simpler instruments, producing a sound like wind chimes in a thunderstorm. When she returned to the bench, her skin was glowing with the brightest colors Marcus had ever seen on her, golds and silvers and even traces of rainbow iridescence.
That was...
She began, then stopped, overwhelmed.
Your first conversation just for the fun of it? Marcus guessed. Yes. And it was.
She paused, searching for the right word.
It was joyful.
I had forgotten that interactions with others could bring joy instead of anxiety. They spent the rest of the day exploring, talking, and simply being two people enjoying each other's company. Zyra tried foods she'd never tasted, asked questions about anything that interested her, and slowly began to relax in a way Marcus hadn't thought possible. As the sun began to set and they made their way back to the palace, Zyra was quiet again, but it was a thoughtful quiet rather than the empty silence she usually maintained.
Thank you, she said as they reached the palace gates.
For what?
For showing me that there are other ways to exist in this world. Other ways to be.
She paused, looking up at the palace towers that glowed softly in the twilight. I do not know if I can maintain this feeling when I return to my duties, but at least now I know it is possible. It doesn't have to be all or nothing, Marcus said gently.
We can work on finding ways to bring some of this joy into your regular life too.
That night, for the first time since Marcus had met her, Princess Zyra sought him out not because she was required to, but because she wanted to. She appeared at his quarters with a small, glowing flower in her hands. I wanted to give you something, she said, offering him the bloom.
To thank you for today.
Marcus accepted the flower, noting how it pulsed gently with warm light.
It's beautiful. What kind is it?
It is called a friendship bloom, Zyra said, her skin showing soft gold patterns. In ancient Zephyrian culture, they were exchanged between friends. Marcus smiled, understanding the significance of the gesture.
Thank you, Zyra.
I'll treasure it. Marcus, she said, her voice carrying a new note of confidence, tomorrow, when my regular schedule resumes, will you help me remember what today felt like?
Every single day, Marcus promised. That's what friends do.
2 months had passed since the day in the market district, and the changes in Princess Zyra were remarkable. She still attended her lessons and fulfilled her royal duties, but now she asked questions that went beyond mere protocol. She expressed opinions, made suggestions, and even occasionally disagreed with her tutors when she felt they were wrong. Marcus watched from his usual corner as Zyra participated in a diplomatic simulation with Lord Vex and several other court officials. The scenario involved a trade dispute between two minor systems, and, traditionally, Zyra would have simply recited the standard imperial response. Instead, she was proposing a completely novel solution. What if we offered to mediate rather than simply impose a ruling, she suggested, her skin showing confident gold patterns. Both systems might be more receptive to a compromise they helped create. Princess, Lord Vex said with barely concealed irritation, the Empire's strength comes from decisive action, not negotiation. But, our strength also comes from the loyalty of our member systems, Zyra countered. If we help them solve their own problems rather than solving problems for them, we build stronger relationships.
Marcus suppressed a smile.
This was exactly the kind of thinking that made humans natural diplomats, the recognition that connection and mutual respect often accomplished more than displays of power. The princess raises an interesting point, said Admiral Koroth, who had become one of Zyra's biggest supporters after observing her growth over the past weeks.
Perhaps we should consider alternative approaches to traditional imperial doctrine.
Lord Vex's skin flushed orange with displeasure, but he couldn't argue with Admiral Korotha's military credentials. We will take the princess's suggestion under advisement, he said stiffly.
After the lesson ended, Zyra approached Marcus with obvious excitement. Did you hear that? He said they would consider my idea.
I heard, Marcus grinned.
How did it feel to speak up like that?
Terrifying at first, Zyra admitted.
But, then, empowering.
I realized that I actually had thoughts worth sharing, opinions that could be valuable. You've always had those, Marcus said. You just needed to believe they mattered. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a palace messenger, who bowed deeply before addressing the princess. Your Highness, Her Majesty the Queen requests your immediate presence in the throne room. There are visitors.
Zyra's skin flickered with anxiety.
Visitors? What kind of visitors?
Unknown, Your Highness. The Queen requested that Ambassador Chen accompany you as well.
They made their way to the throne room quickly, Marcus noting how Zyra's newfound confidence seemed to waver when faced with unexpected royal obligations. When they entered the vast chamber, they found Queen Lyralii seated on her throne with 3 figures standing before her, tall, elegant beings with crystalline skin and eyes like faceted gems. Andromedans, Zyra whispered, recognizing the species she had been studying. But why are they here?
Princess Zyra, Ambassador Chen, the Queen called as they approached. Please join us.
Our guests have brought news of significant importance.
The lead Andromedan, whose crystalline surface reflected rainbow patterns, spoke in their musical language while electromagnetic fields translated the meaning. We bring greetings from the Andromedan Confederacy, and a proposal of great mutual benefit, the translation rendered their words. We have observed the recent changes in imperial diplomatic philosophy, particularly the innovative approaches suggested by Princess Zyra during recent trade negotiations. Marcus felt Zyra stiffen beside him.
Her diplomatic simulation suggestions had somehow reached Andromedan ears, which meant their intelligence network was far more extensive than anyone had realized. We are intrigued by the princess's emphasis on mediation and mutual benefit rather than hierarchical imposition, the Andromedan continued. These concepts align with Andromedan values, and we believe they represent a new direction for galactic diplomacy.
Queen Lyraliai's skin showed carefully controlled surprise. You wish to discuss Princess Zyra's ideas?
Indeed. We propose a formal diplomatic exchange. Princess Zyra would visit the Andromedan Confederacy for one standard month, observing our consensus-based decision-making processes and sharing imperial perspectives.
In return, we would send one of our own young diplomats to observe imperial methods.
The throne room fell silent. This was unprecedented. The Andromedans had never shown interest in cultural exchange before, preferring to maintain diplomatic distance from what they viewed as the Empire's authoritarian tendencies.
This is quite unexpected, Queen Lyraliai said diplomatically.
We would need time to consider such a proposal. Of course, the Andromedan replied. But, we should mention that our interest was specifically sparked by reports of the princess's collaboration with the human ambassador. We understand that humans have unique approaches to building consensus and forming emotional connections across species barriers. Marcus felt every eye in the room turn to him, and he struggled to maintain his diplomatic composure. Somehow, his work with Zyra had become galactic news. The human influence on imperial diplomatic development is notable, the Andromedan continued. We would be particularly interested in observing how these human concepts of friendship and trust building might be applied to interstellar relations. After the Andromedans departed with promises to await the Empire's decision, Marcus found himself alone with Queen Lyraliai and Princess Zyra in the Queen's private study. The Queen's skin was cycling through rapid color changes that indicated intense thought. "This changes everything," she said finally.
"If the Andromedans are willing to engage in cultural exchange, other species will follow."
"But, Zyra."
"Yes, Mother?
Are you prepared for this?
Leading a diplomatic mission of this magnitude would thrust you into the center of galactic politics.
There would be enormous pressure, constant scrutiny." Marcus watched as Zyra considered the question, her skin showing thoughtful silver and gold patterns. 2 months ago, she would have immediately deferred to her mother's judgment or expressed anxiety about the responsibility.
Now, she was actually thinking about what she wanted. "Mother," Zyra said slowly, "may I ask you something?"
"Of course.
When you were my age, did you ever feel like the galaxy was too big, too complex, too overwhelming to understand?"
Queen Lyraliai smiled, her skin warming to gentle gold.
"Every day. I felt like a small fish trying to swim in an ocean of impossible currents.
But, you became the greatest empress in our history."
"How?"
"I learned that I didn't have to understand everything at once. I just had to understand the next right thing to do, and then do it." The Queen paused, studying her daughter's face.
"What feels like the next right thing to you?"
Zyra was quiet for a long moment, and Marcus could see her weighing fears against possibilities, duty against desire, the safe path against the meaningful one. "I want to go," she said finally. "Not because I should, not because it's expected of me, but because I want to learn how other species build understanding across differences. I want to see if the things Marcus has taught me about friendship and trust can work on a larger scale."
"And if it doesn't work? If you make mistakes or fail to meet expectations?"
"Then, I will learn from the failure and try again," Zyra said with growing confidence. "Marcus taught me that making mistakes while trying to do something meaningful is better than succeeding at doing nothing important." Marcus felt a surge of pride at hearing his own philosophy reflected back at him, but also a touch of anxiety.
"Zyra, are you sure about this?
Diplomatic missions can be incredibly stressful, and you've just started getting comfortable with yourself." "That is exactly why I need to do this," she replied, turning to face him fully. "For the first time in my life, I know who I am when I am allowed to be myself.
Now I want to see if that person can make a difference in the galaxy."
Queen Lyraliai stood from her chair and moved to the window that overlooked the city.
"Very well.
But, Marcus, I have one more request to make of you."
"Your Majesty? I want you to accompany Zyra on this mission."
"As her cultural advisor and friend." Mother, that's not necessary, Zyra began, but the queen held up a hand.
It is absolutely necessary.
You have grown tremendously in these past months, my star, but you are still learning to navigate relationships and trust your own judgment. Having Marcus with you will provide stability and support while you find your footing in the larger galactic community. Marcus looked between mother and daughter, seeing both the protective love of the queen and the nervous excitement of the princess. If Zyra wants me there, I'll go, he said. But it has to be her choice.
I do want you there, Zyra said immediately.
Not because I cannot handle it alone, but because friends support each other through new challenges.
The next 3 weeks were a whirlwind of preparation.
Zyra threw herself into learning everything she could about Andromedan culture, history, and social structures. But, unlike her previous studies, which had been rote memorization of facts and protocols, this learning was driven by genuine curiosity and excitement. Listen to this, she said one evening as they sat in the garden reviewing diplomatic files. The Andromedans make decisions through something called harmonic consensus. They literally sing together until their thoughts align.
Isn't that beautiful?
It sounds like it could take a while, Marcus observed. But imagine how unified they must feel afterwards, Zyra mused.
How connected.
No one is left behind or overruled, they find a solution that resonates with everyone. Marcus smiled at her enthusiasm. This was what learning looked like when someone was genuinely engaged, not the grim determination to avoid mistakes, but the joy of discovering new possibilities. The night before their departure, Queen Lyralii held a private dinner for the three of them. It was unlike any royal meal Marcus had attended, informal, warm, filled with conversation and even laughter. I have something for both of you, the queen said as they finished eating. She produced 2 small devices that looked like crystal and jewelry.
Communication implants.
They will allow you to contact me instantly if you need guidance or support. Mother, we will be fine, Zyra said, but she accepted the device gratefully.
I know you will.
But a mother worries, and a queen plans for contingencies.
Queen Lyralii's expression grew more serious.
Zyra, you are about to represent not just our empire, but a new way of thinking about galactic relations.
The pressure will be enormous. I understand. Do you?
There will be beings who want you to fail, who see your approach as weakness.
There will be moments when you question everything you have learned about friendship and trust.
The queen looked directly at Marcus. And there will be times when even the best intentions are not enough to bridge the gaps between species.
Your Majesty, Marcus said carefully, are you having second thoughts about this mission?
No, she replied firmly. I believe in what you both have accomplished, and I believe in what you might accomplish together.
But I want you to understand that you are attempting something unprecedented, using human concepts of emotional connection to reshape galactic diplomacy. The stakes could not be higher.
The next morning, as their ship prepared to depart for Andromedan space, Marcus found himself standing on the palace landing pad with a mixture of excitement and nervousness that he hadn't felt since his first diplomatic assignment. Ready for this, he asked Zyra as they watched their luggage being loaded onto the sleek imperial vessel. I think so, she replied, her skin showing confident gold patterns mixed with traces of nervous silver.
Marcus, can I ask you something? When you first agreed to help me, did you ever imagine it would lead to this?
Marcus considered the question as he watched the Zephyrian capital sprawling out beneath them.
Honestly? I just hoped I could help you feel less alone. I never imagined we'd end up trying to revolutionize galactic diplomacy. Do you think we can do it? Really change how species relate to each other?
I think, Marcus said slowly, that if anyone can prove that friendship and trust work on a galactic scale, it's someone who has experienced their power on a personal level.
And if I fail?
Then, you fail while trying to do something that matters, which is infinitely better than succeeding at something meaningless. Princess Zyra smiled, the bright, genuine smile that had become more frequent over their months together.
Thank you, Marcus. For everything. Thank you for letting me be part of your journey.
As their ship lifted off and began its journey to Andromedan space, Marcus looked back at the Zephyrian homeworld shrinking beneath them and thought about the strange path that had led him here. He had come to the palace as a human ambassador trying to maintain good relations with an alien empire. Now he was traveling to another alien civilization as the friend and advisor of a princess who was attempting to reshape the galaxy through the power of human-inspired connection. 3 days into their journey, as they traveled through the strange beauty of hyperspace, Zyra found Marcus on the observation deck staring out at the swirling colors of compressed spacetime. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, settling beside him on the bench that ran along the viewing windows. "How much you've changed," Marcus replied honestly. "When I first met you, you could barely look at me directly. Now you're about to lead a diplomatic mission to one of the most isolated species in the galaxy." "I could not have done this alone," Zyra said softly. "You gave me something I never knew I was missing." "What's that?" "The knowledge that I am worth caring about, not for what I represent or what I can do, but simply for who I am." Her skin glowed with warm gold light. "That knowledge changes everything, Marcus. It makes me brave in ways I never imagined possible." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the hypnotic patterns of hyperspace flow past their windows. Finally, Zyra spoke again. "Whatever happens with the Andromedans, whatever comes next, I want you to know that you saved my life. Not dramatically, not heroically, but quietly and kindly and completely." "You saved your own life," Marcus corrected gently. "I just reminded you that it was worth saving." "Perhaps. But I think that is what humans do best. You see the potential in others and help them see it too. You make the galaxy a more hopeful place simply by believing that broken things can be healed and that connection is always possible." Marcus felt a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the ship's heating systems. This was why he had become a diplomat in the first place, not for the politics or the prestige, but for moments like this when understanding flowed between beings across the vast differences of biology and culture. "Well then," he said with a smile, "let's go prove that friendship really can change the galaxy." When their ship finally emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Andromedan territory, they were greeted by an escort of vessels unlike anything Marcus had ever seen. The Andromedan ships looked like living crystalline growths, beautiful and organic and somehow singing with harmonious frequencies that their ship's sensors could barely detect. "Incoming transmission," their pilot announced. "Audio and harmonic components." The message that came through was part spoken language and part music, creating a communication style that was hauntingly beautiful and incredibly complex. "Welcome, Princess Zyra of the Zephyrian Empire and Ambassador Marcus Chun of Earth. We are honored by your presence and eager to learn from your wisdom. Prepare to experience the harmony of worlds united in common purpose." As their ship was guided toward the Andromedan homeworld, Marcus caught sight of Princess Zyra's reflection in the viewing port. Her skin was glowing with every color he had ever seen her display, gold and silver and traces of rainbow iridescence that spoke of excitement, nervousness, determination, and hope all mixed together. She had become exactly what Queen Lyralii had hoped for, not just a princess, but a person. Not just a ruler, but someone capable of forming genuine connections across any barrier. And, in becoming herself, she had become something the galaxy desperately needed, proof that understanding was possible, that differences could be bridges instead of walls, and that the simple human concept of friendship might indeed be powerful enough to reshape the stars. The adventure ahead would test everything they had learned together, but Marcus had no doubt that Princess Zyra was ready for whatever challenges awaited. She had discovered who she was when allowed to simply be herself, and that self was someone capable of extraordinary things. As their ship began its descent toward a world of crystal cities and harmonic spires, Marcus smiled. The queen had asked him to take care of her daughter, but somewhere along the way, he had discovered that Princess Zyra was perfectly capable of taking care of herself and perhaps taking care of the galaxy's future as well. The real journey was just beginning.